essentially, it was an imbalanced, broken childhood that had trauma and tragedy. And then 25 years after their divorce, and this is what I speak into as a spiritual experience, because I had done so much work at that point to be in relationship with self. My dad showed up at my mom's doorstep and he shot and killed her.
This is Eagle Freedom Presents.
Joining us today is Ann Jonas. Now, she is also beautifully known as the Love Messenger. And I just like saying that, the Love Messenger. Ann is a soul light curator who is deeply passionate about guiding people to become who they truly are, reminding us all that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. With decades of experience as a body worker and a birth doula, Ann has spent a lifetime in service to others. Today, she brings that profound nurturing energy to work as a intuitive healer, shamanic guide, speaker, and published author. She is also the producer of Sacred Connection, Finding Our Path to Deeper Connection with Self and the Divine. And she lives by the powerful truth that our mess is our message. Would you please welcome Ann Jonas? Ann, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Destin. It's been amazing to have this, as we were just talking before we hit record, the way that we weave together the energies and the qualities of what I love to say as light-minded and like-hearted beings. So thank you for the
Yeah,
opportunity.
you're welcome, and thank you for accepting this opportunity to be on the show. It's been a great connection, and we actually do have a shared journey. We'll get into that here in just a little bit. But let's just dive into things. You know, one of the things that I thought was interesting in talking with you and then looking at your information is the fact that after a 15-year career in the restaurant industry, you decided that you were going to walk away from that and do something completely different. So let me ask you, Anna, what made you to walk away from a 15-year career?
It's interesting. I've never heard it put that way. And for me, what it was is I was actually pushed out.
Oh,
I feel like a lot of people say that they got pushed out of the corporate world. And I say corporate world because it's really the only job that I've had that has been essentially a job working for other. And since then, I've been working for myself. Essentially, it was the birth doula work. So where I was working at a restaurant, uh, fine dining establishment, it wasn't the kind of job you could just call in sick. You really had to get your shift covered. And so I'd been doing that for 15 years. And when I started with body work, that led me to doula work. And I was juggling all three, working in the restaurant, having my body work practice, and also working with clients. And essentially, I was at a birth and I had to get my shift covered. And I felt as if I was contracted with two parties, the restaurant and my clients. And I felt into it. And I didn't even realize it at the time, but now I know. I asked God, you've led me here, take me to the next place. And essentially, it was this decision where it's funny, I've never created a business plan in my life. And I actually call it a birth plan.
mhm.
And I had $5,000 in the bank. I had the intention to see 1 to 3 birth clients a month and 5 to 7 massages a week. And I left because it felt as if what was aligned was to take the next step. And I know many people have had that experience of being in a life, in a relationship, in a job, in a home where it doesn't feel as serving for your growth, for your evolution. And so to be willing, because that's what it is, be willing to trust, to take that leap, to take off over the cliff, to spread your wings. I love the eagle image behind
Right.
you, and to trust in what we're called into. So yeah, that was it. And then from that point on, I've been a soulpreneur, SOUL, soulpreneur for now about 23 years.
Wow. So what was your life like before you started this journey, though? What was life like growing up for you? Tell us a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's funny, everything in divine timing. I just had a beautiful session the other day with the internal family systems, the constellation work, and a lot of clarity actually came through. I'm 57. I've been on this planet for a few decades, and I was raised by two parents that had their own journey, which we all have this. And
Mm,
essentially, where I come from energetically, spiritually, I recognize that we choose our parents. I chose my parents. I incarnated into this version, into a family that had a Jewish background, middle class, middle America, California, and it was all good. And then they got divorced when I was about 11. My father had a journey, what we would call a mental health journey,
mm,
essentially, of dancing through the roller coaster ride of bipolar.
mm,
And so for the next 25 years, while being raised by a single mom who was a teacher, I had a dad over here dancing in his own world, multiple suicide attempts, multiple marriages. And there were some challenges in being raised by these two people that had their own inner struggle. And I'm sure many people have a, a witness to that in their own experience where their parents were dancing in their own growth and maybe
mhm.
as a result didn't create the foundation that led to honoring oneself. And that's really what has come through in my journey as an intuitive channel and really as a soul seeker. Is I've been on a self-help journey. When my parents got divorced at 11, that was the beginning of seeking out guidance and teachers and programs and pathways that eventually led me to God, or back to God,
Mm.
I should say. I skipped out on God for a little while and God didn't make sense. The God of that God. I have a different God relationship now, which is another story that we might get into. But essentially, it was an imbalanced, broken childhood that had trauma and tragedy. And then 25 years after their divorce, and this is what I speak into as a spiritual experience, because I had done so much work at that point to be in relationship with self. My dad showed up at my mom's doorstep and he shot and killed her. And
Wow.
that was, so I'm 57. That was about 21 years ago. And it really was this honoring that, and this is hard for some people to hear, but in the realm of I chose my parents, I chose this path, that this was a, an opportunity for me to see life through the lens of the lotus. No mud, no lotus. And that
Well,
is a
explain.
great, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, explain that for some people who don't understand what you mean when you say the lotus. Explain that so people have a good concept of what you're talking about.
Yeah, essentially, Thich Nhat Hanh speaks into no mud, no lotus. The lotus is an image of many metaphysical and sages and masters throughout time. And it's this recognition that the lotus blossom, the flower, the plant, literally grows and lives and dies in the mud. In the mud. That's how it
Wow.
exists. That's the nurturing component of this flower, of this plant. It can't exist outside of the mud. And so, where I have taken this on, the lotus is part of my whole existence. I have a tattoo on my back, which led to the Lotus Touch, which was my first business, doing body work and doula work. That then led to me being the Lotus Coach when I shifted from that as life continued to unfold. And after my marriage of 4 years to a partner who had a cancer journey, I was left as a widow with a 2-year-old. So, an additional muddy journey that brought another blossom. And this
Wow.
is me recognizing that Everything happens for a reason, and everything is serving. And I know that doesn't land so well when people look at the traumas and the tragedies that they've lived through and walked through. And it's this honoring for me of this awareness that we live here in Earth School. Maybe some of you have
Wow.
heard that term before. I know we talked about it.
Mhm.
Earth School, it's a place to experience, learn, grow, and evolve. And again, it's the mud, the muck, the poo, because shift happens.
Right?
It's your choice. And this is the hard part. It is your choice. How we talked about E+R=O, how
Mhm.
we're going to navigate the events, the experiences in our life. That's the E. It's the response or the reaction, which are actually two different things. Do we respond or do we react? To create the outcome, which is the O, which is the story we're telling. We're telling stories. We're writing a book. All these aspects create chapters. And this is the journey that we're on, the book of you, the book of your
Wow.
life.
You described so much in that little time about some of the stuff that you'd gone through the suicide, your dad showing up on the doorstep and shooting your mom, and then you have a child, and then your partner gets cancer, and your partner passes away, and you're having to deal with all of this. And I guess the question would be is how do you do it though? I mean, how do you do with it? How do you find that guiding light to help you navigate through all of this? How did you find that?
I would say layers of reaching out, having community, which is important, meaning having beings in your life, beings that were in my life that created that, we talked about it, that net to be able to fall back into. But underneath that was my recognition that this is a journey that I choose and that it really is here to knock me down so I can get back up again. You
Well,
know, I was going
I
to
was gonna
say
say
when
you
we see kids that fall down, we don't admonish them for falling down. We encourage them to get back up, and it's going to be 10,000 falling downs until the point where they're walking, and even then they fall down. How many kids fall down off bikes, off, skateboards? We aren't as afraid of falling down when we're young. As we get older, well, maybe it's going to hurt more because we're going to have, more brittle bones, but energetically, psychically, spiritually, the whole point is to fall down so that
and you know
we can recognize to get back up again.
You know what's interesting about what you just said about the falling down part is I think as we become adults in the adult world, when we fall down, we start thinking other things, right? As a kid, you just fall down, you just get back up. As an adult, you're like, oh, did somebody see that? What did I do to stumble? I mean, because we worry about what people are seeing in us when we're going through this, right? We're so worried about what the outside sees in us that we don't take the time to see what the inside is looking at us and what we're really going through and how we're really reacting. Does that sound about right?
Absolutely. And honestly, we take ourselves way too seriously in this life. And I definitely have done it. And I've navigated that judgment of others and how am I being seen. And I feel that the older we get, it's an interesting dance. It's both the older we get, we're more concerned about how others see us. And the flip side is the older we get, we care less. And so it's really your journey individually of this is a bottom line foundational piece of my work. How do you see yourself?
Mhm.
How do you feel when you look in the mirror? How do you experience how you're showing up for yourself, for your family, in your community? So much of this is coming back to principles that I love to share through the Four Agreements, the Don Miguel Ruiz Toltec wisdom. When we're concerned about how others see us, we're making assumptions, we're taking things personally. When we are worried about how we're being heard, we're not being impeccable with our word. Being impeccable with our word is really owning our truth, what's coming from our heart. And when we're doing our best, we're not worried about how anybody else is thinking about it because we know we're doing our best. So there's some principles that I have gained through my journey. And this is it. We're all here on an evolutionary journey. And some people are getting it earlier than others, and some people will never get it. And that's really not any of our business how anybody else
Mhm.
is living their life. What it's really about is always coming back to self. And that's essentially what I have found as foundational. And self for me also represents God, and not the God of the Judeo Christian model that I was raised in, the God of love,
Mm.
the God of the energetic source that is part of this entire quantum field, this multiverse, this experience of existing.
One of the things you describe yourself as is this soul light curator. Now, what does that mean? What is this? What is soul light curator? Tell us a little bit more about this.
Essentially, where this came from, this was actually gifted to me by somebody in my community. That's how she saw me. And I felt into it and I recognized its truth because my greatest joy is to support people in recognizing that you're having a human experience as a spiritual being, which you spoke into with my bio. And what that means is that it's for you to see your light. And what I offer is the opportunity of conversations and teachings and wisdom, the intuitive channeling that's a part of who I am, to help you see yourself, to help you see the light that you are, which is an expression of the divine. And to remember that we're not here alone. We're never alone. We're part of a vibrational field of energy that's also tapped into the consciousness of our planet. We're here in this dimension as one in a collective consciousness. So as a curator, I am I'm gathering aspects of teachings and pieces that then reflect how we are all light. And so it's about reminding people to remember that you chose to be here and that you're actually curating your own life. You're choosing along the way, literally from the beginning. I'm a huge fan of Pixar, and I don't get any kickback, by the way. But they have put out some incredible messages through their animated films, right? That are not just for children. I love the movie Soul. And there's this very funny scene that I love to talk about where all these little eggs with little faces and arms and legs are walking around there. They're in Earth school. Hello. And
Mm.
they open up this hole in the bottom of whateverness, heaven, however you want to look at it. And they look down on the planet Earth and they're like, oh, I want to be a blah, blah, blah. So they all pick what they're going to be. And then they stand in line. And then there's this machine that slaps some personality on them. And then they show up on Earth and they're born. That's the deal. And that personality is the ancestry, the genealogy, the lineage that you choose, and all the pieces that come from that. I talked about this family constellation work. It's not just that we chose our parents, we chose everything in that energetic line. Yeah, I don't really recognize that dis-ease, and I say it that way, dis-ease is genetic. What I see as genetic is a story. And we tap into that. Why? Well, first of all, I don't really like that word WHY, but what's the reason for that? Because it's what you're here to learn, just like the little eggs in the movie. Who do you desire to be? And what are the experiences that are going to come from existing as that? And it comes with color and religion and location on the earth. All of that contributes to the mission, the purpose, the divine design for what your soul's evolution is ready to do at this time. And
Mm.
there are people that will not ever recognize that. But if you're here in Eagle Freedom Presents and connected to the vibration of what we're offering, there is a part of you that recognizes that truth.
Right. You know, you say the mess is part of the message, is the message. Tell us a little bit about that and how that in fact how that impacts each individual's life, because a lot of us will take a look at the mess that we're in and we don't look at it as anything but that's just a mess. I can't believe I had to go through that or all that. But you look at it a whole different way. Explain that.
As I explain that, I'm going to speak into why why I don't like the word why. That word for me, I see as disempowering. It creates a victim energy. What I like to say, what I offer people are three different questions. What am I learning? How is this serving me? And where are my edges? My edges are the expression of my boundaries. That idea of what am I letting in? What am I not letting in? What am I holding away? What am I taking on? The mess is our life. All of us have a mess. And the message then comes through is how we show up.
Hmm.
What is the work that we do in the world? What are the communities that we're attracting? And this also reflects on the idea of we are seeing who we are being. You know, Gandhi has the message of be the change you want to see in the world.
Hmm.
That means that you cannot see anything outside of how you are experiencing yourself. Brings us back to the mirror. Brings us back to the four agreements and the Toltec wisdom that says you're the star of the show. You are the star, the choreographer, the director, the producer. And that means that everybody in your life is a supporting actor, which means you're a supporting actor for everybody else's journey that you're connected to.
Hmm.
It is created by you, it's curated by you, it's cultivated by you, all based on your choices. Essentially, we all are messy. We're human beings. That makes us messy. Our message is because we are spiritual beings. You know, people have said to me, why would I choose my parents? Why would I choose abusive parents? You know, why would you choose your parents? They
Hmm.
killed each other and created all kinds of drama. Why would I choose to be given up for adoption? Like, why would I choose to be, abandoned essentially? That one's easy for me. You're on a mission to deepen your relationship with self and self-love. So what's the best way to do that? Literally be betrayed from the get.
Hmm.
So when we look at life in this way of seeing how the challenges, the mess, become the impetus for what we continue to attract and choose into, and then essentially it's the message for ourselves first and foremost. This is where I'm always going to come back to. Anything that anybody ever does, whether it's be a part of my community or work with me one-on-one, the idea is I say, you are saying yes to you before you say yes to me. And that's essentially foundational. You're always saying yes to you, even when you're saying no to you, which is an
Mm.
interesting concept because
Right.
of that idea of what are you allowing in? What are you not allowing in? That is your relationship with you foundationally.
Mm. You know, there are so many people going through so much, especially with the world that we're in right now. And you talk about the message, and we talked about this before about we can't compare our mess to somebody else's messes because, as you mentioned, everybody's mess is different in life. And so what about that person right now who's really trying to grasp what you're talking about here? And they're in this position that they're literally, I mean, they talk about being stuck in the mud right now. They're
Mhm.
deep down in the mud. So if you were to have somebody in front of you right now who is just going through that, what's the first thing you would want to tell that person to do?
Get curious.
Mhm.
Curiosity. Curiosity provides clarity. And communicate, first and foremost, with yourself. And there are a lot of ways to do that. Trusting in what is readily available to all of us, which is nature, the earth. It's a beautiful mirror to witness through. I love saying this. There's not one leaf on the planet that judges another leaf for dropping early or being the last one hanging on the tree. There
Mm,
is no judgment in nature. So we can look to nature to teach us. This is part of the shamanic training that I went through, is to really recognize the quality of what the elements provide for us. So much in the realm of teaching us how to be in relationship to ourselves. Trust, that word has the word us in it. So it's that recognition we are never alone.
mm,
Even if you feel alone, you feel you don't have family, you feel you don't have community, you feel lost in the world, there is always an energetic experience to access. It's remembering that we've been cut off. Part of this human condition was to go through amnesia, to have a veil separate us from I mean, seriously, if we were to be born and really know exactly what's going on, it would be very hard to be human and
right.
focus. Because again, that's what we chose. We chose to come here and do all this, to play in this playground of this matrix, of this dimensional experience. Now, as we are in this awakening consciousness, which is why so many people are having these conversations, because more and more people are coming to the light, so to speak.
Mhm,
Again, this is a solo journey, but it's never meant to be done alone. But the most important person ever in your life, forever, from the beginning to the end, from first breath to last breath, is you.
mhm,
My invitation to anyone is to say, remember that you're here to cultivate a relationship with you. And so that's where that idea of trust in the us, that is you and the divine, and that everyone is around here for you. The other piece, I don't particularly care for the word belief because it actually has the word lie in it. That's always fun to look at. I love to play with words. I do prefer the word faith. And that word is an acronym. Face all in the heart.
mm,
So again, we're coming back to your journey is for you, with you, by you, in the soup. Oh, chicken soup for the soul. We love Jack
right.
Canfield.
Yeah.
Oh, the E+R equals O. We're bringing Rimbright back in. I need to
Right.
get on his podcast. Uh,
Yeah.
so the idea of the soup of our existence is created by essentially our intention and then the choices we make along the way.
I want to go back real quick to what you were talking about, your relationship with yourself.
Mhm.
And because it's so hard, really, how can you have a relationship with somebody else? Whatever that relationship, family, your significant other, whatever, how can you have a relationship with them without first having the relationship with you? Because that relationship with you is eventually going to come out towards and in those other relationships, right?
Yes, it's all beginning with you. And what I witness along my journey and in the communities that I'm with, a lot of people will pass off the
Mhm.
responsibility to the other. Then we have this experience of blame, of victimhood, of disempowerment. And through that, it feels like a trap.
Mm,
When we choose to take back our power, which means to recognize that we've actually created this show that is floating around us, even the traumas and the tragedies and the pain. I love to say we receive many gifts in this lifetime. Most of them come in ugly packaging. What does that mean? The gifts are the experience of challenge. Challenge is part of our growth journey. and to honor that we are here walking this life when we essentially take back our power, which is the difference. There's this power versus force. David
Mm.
Hawkins wrote a book about it. The idea that we are choosing often in this dimensional experience, and we see it all over the globe, the energy of force becomes prominent, forcing others. And where I like to come from is we're the ones that actually get to choose to be our power. And our power is the energy of divine consciousness. When we are giving away our power out of fear of shining our light, then we're allowing for our freedom and our sovereignty to essentially be stripped away.
Uh,
We are the only ones that truly give ourselves freedom. They're the only ones that truly allow ourselves to stand in our sovereignty. And for many, that may not feel true. It's again about recognizing when you come back to you, when you look in the mirror, that statement, the eyes are the seat of the soul.
mhm.
Guess what? You get to see your own soul. Look into your eyes. Feel into what that experience is. And if it feels like you're not there, then let yourself know that you can go find yourself. And there are so many tools and techniques and practitioners and programs. And what it all comes back to is you choosing you first and foremost.
One of the things you talked about when you were talking about power, right? We're so sometimes we give our power away, right?
Mhm.
So how can somebody take their power back? It could be whatever their relationship, whatever kind of circumstance they feel they do not have the power. So how can they get that power back so they can empower themselves to better their lives?
Well, for one, it's taking a look at the whole picture and self reflection, honoring that you've made choices along the way. That's probably the hardest first step. When you're willing to say, I have created my life, that literally opens the door. That statement will open the door to the beings, the resources, the communities. They literally will show up. And then you will have access to the reflections of others that are doing the work of being in relationship with self. Again, back to that piece, who we be is what we see. And you can look at all kinds of, whether it be, manifestation groups or success principles. You are the product of the 5 people that are in your field.
Hmm.
That can
Hmm.
be a hard one to swallow because you look out there and you're like, oh, that person's doing this and oh, that person's doing that and this and that. Well, when you're willing to say, wow, that's how I'm showing up, that's the moment that you recognize, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to shift this. The other piece, I talk about the Lotus path. Most of us are walking through life, having experiences, whether they're massive or small. And we have this experience, and then we just kind of toss this box aside, put a lid on it, move on. What is serving is looking at that box, looking at that experience, looking at that chapter. Even maybe it's just a little essay, looking at it and saying, wow, okay, I get this. I'm grateful that I had this experience. I have compassion for me and the choices I've made. I have forgiveness. Most of you have heard this. Forgiveness is all about you. It's never about anybody else.
Hmm.
Self-forgiveness, self-love, the relationship with self, self-reflection. When we do that, then we're dancing in the mud. Maybe there's tears, emotion that's come through as we have had these experiences, these reflection points. And then what we create is not an empty box, but a box full of mud. And when mud hardens, it creates a brick.
Mhm.
So essentially, we get to decide what kind of lotus path we're walking on, but we're all walking on a lotus path. Is it wobbly or is it stable? Because you yourself have felt the mud and you yourself have experienced the blossom. You, Destin, and
Right.
everybody else that's watching this. You can reflect back and say, oh, yeah, that was hard and that was amazing. That's your lotus path that you're creating. We all walk our own path.
I'm glad you touched on the topic of your 5 closest people that you hang out with, because I believe that's so important. And one thing I've come to realize, though, as you're making a shift, right? As you're shifting everything, your energy level shifts, right? Your energy is going up to a different higher frequency. One thing you notice is sometimes you find that that circle of 5 friends eventually changes over the course of time. And you start to see things that before you thought were benefiting you, but now as you're going to another higher energy level, you're realizing and you're finding that some of these, they're not, you're not shutting them out completely, but you're finding that the circle is changing that you're around. And that is so important, especially if you want to change the direction of what's happening in your life. You've got to change that circle of people you're around constantly all the time.
Yes. And what's interesting, so everything in this existence is frequency, it's vibration, and it's energy. Everything is about attraction and magnetism. And it's funny, you said circle. We're old enough to remember the radio dial that actually was a circle. And you're like,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is the days of analog, right?
Right.
And you turn the dial, right? And in between the radio stations, it's right. It's just this
Hmm.
like, the static. All of the radio stations are being put out there. Okay, let's come into the modern world. We've got 800,000 channels we can tap into, right? We can go to all the different streaming devices. All of that's accessible right here, right now. What do you desire to tune into?
Hmm.
And when you tune into something, then you're going to receive the information from that show, from that station, from that podcast. You're choosing. When we look at our community circles, when we look at our vibrational experiences of who's in our field, it's really based on what dial we're tuning into. And you're right. As you change the dial, as you shift where you're looking, people are going to naturally fall away. You don't have to do anything. They're not
Hmm.
going to align with you anymore. I've watched it happen over the decades as I have shifted, and it doesn't feel good. I'm going to let y'all know it hurts when all of a
Hmm.
sudden there's people who were your people, they aren't are your people, but when you start to look at you and you realize that you weren't really aligned with them from this perspective. You were aligned with them from that perspective, from that frequency. Again, remembering that this is a solo journey. We have family, we have partners, we have children, we have animals, we have community, colleagues. Take a look. If you've been on the planet for at least 20 years, people have come and gone.
Hmm.
They've died, they moved away. This idea of a friend, reason, season, lifetime, right?
Right.
Very few are lifetime, very few, because we are constantly evolving.
So let me ask you, how does everything that we've talked about, how does all of this come about? How does this play into your sacred connection? Because I really want to talk about that because I know you just wrapped up a course on this. So, what is sacred connection, and how is that tied to everything that we've talked about?
Essentially, it's everything. Like I said, the most important relationship you're going to have is with you. And so, what this sacred connection community and what started as a 9-week journey over 3 years ago, which, as you said, I wrapped up round 12. So, I've done 108 weeks of this container. It's all about looking at the different pathways that we take for the same end result, which is that we are here to be in this connection with self and the divine. What makes it sacred is that it's in essence the key to the whole universe. We're on this journey. And it's in the light-minded, like-hearted
Hmm.
community that is a reflection of how we're showing up that serves as a guide, and that we're essentially guiding ourselves home. We're all walking ourselves home, and we're doing it based on the choices that we choose in the communities that we're a part of. So Sacred Connection essentially came to me when I was going through the end of what the after COVID, the corona apocalypse, the many ways that we've talked about that journey where everything for many of us was stripped away. And I wasn't doing in-person thing, the retreats, the workshops, the body work, all of that had disappeared. And so I asked the voices that I was always hearing to come to me at night and give me a message and lead me down a path. And that's literally what happened. I was downloaded to do this 9-week webinar, which has now evolved. And it has grown and it became an anthology that I wrote a chapter in called, the title of that chapter is Love is Everything.
Mm.
And I had 6 other beautiful co-authors that had been a part of the community to join. And we're all saying really the same thing. And the important thing is to listen to what activates your heart, what activates your inner flame. And that will serve you and that will lead you. And it's all sacred. Existing is sacred.
Mm.
We all chose to be here. There are no accidents. There are no mistakes. Nothing is ever wrong. That may be hard to hear, but that means
Well,
that everything is here for us to learn.
right, and learning is learning is part of growing, right? It really
Right.
is. You know, it's one thing to have, Ann, to have you tell us about the program, but I think it's really important for us. I was going through some of your testimonials because I think that's where the proof is, right? It's the people who have gone through this, and a couple of these I just want to read to our audience. I have been so stuck for so long, so much that I didn't even recognize it. And I was so hesitant about joining and it being too woohoo, because that's a woohoo. And yet, week after week, the experiences and the things I've learned, especially about myself, have been meaningful and so profound. It's been better than therapy, honestly. Thank you. And here's another one. What a wonderful way to connect with a community of spiritually aware, magnetic humans. Each week brought amazing energy and guidance on connecting to our higher self and each other, and choreographed each session seamlessly and led us all through a truly powerful 9 weeks. So, the testimonials can go on and on, but that really tells you about the power behind what it is that you're doing.
Thank you for that. Yes, being on our final session of 9 weeks last night and listening to some of the repeat participants share that this is something that is an integral part of their life and their journey and has supported them in coming into deeper awareness of what their purpose is, what their divine design is. I will say there are many pathways to get here. There are many programs, there are many organizations, there are many practitioners, therapists, coaches, teachers, guides. There are so many ways to get here. My invitation to you is find what aligns with your heart, what lights you up, right? Back to being a
Hmm.
soul-like curator. I support people in recognizing what lights them up. And I may be the path. And my encouragement for you is to walk the path. Join the community that serves you. And if it's mine, that's fabulous.
Right? Well, the
And I
interesting
will
thing about
say,
that.
speaking of that, humor is a huge part of this life. We need to be able to laugh at ourselves. We need to be able to walk around and be silly and trip up, because
Mhm.
that is essentially part of this lesson. And I know so many of us really desire to take ourselves so seriously, and that's not the point. It's not the
Mhm.
point. Let's get out of the seriousness and let's get into the funny, because that's where we actually grow. And I'm going to tell you, Humor and laughter and tears and pain, they're all the same. It's all an energetic frequency.
Hmm. It's funny you were talking about, if to find the right community, and you may have to go through several different communities to find your community because you're going to have to find the one, as you mentioned, that resonates with you, what it is you want to get out of it, right? So don't be afraid to go to one group, and if it doesn't work, that's okay. That's part of
Mhm.
the process, right? That's part of the process to find out what group you really resonate with. So don't be afraid to step out and try a group here or try a group there, or reaching out to Ann and finding out if this is really for you. Speaking of reaching out to you, how can the audience reach out to you and get more information about your programs?
You can find everything that I offer and a way to connect with me by phone, by email, through my website, which is the lotuspath.love. Yes, it is. I love that as the love messenger. Yep, the lotuspath.love, and all my programs, all my offerings, all of my previous, I have a whole YouTube channel as well, and the Love Messenger. I offer a monthly portal energy perspective guidance, a channeling and activation. I offer uh, twice a month mailings. And so you can get lots of things for free and lots of ways to tap in and lots of ways to connect, whether you're here
you know,
on Idaho Earth or anywhere on the globe.
That's right. I want to take a break, kind of move to a different area real quick. I wanted to explain to the audience listening and watching right now how our paths have crossed because it was just like, we didn't know each other. And then all of a sudden, we're co-authors on a new book. It's my first adventure into this. You've done it a couple of times. So let me ask you a question as somebody who's been a participant before in something like this. What is that like to be a co-author in a book with other like-minded individuals?
It's serving, it's a community. It's been, like I said, my first published chapter was in a book called Empowered Self-Care, Healing Body, Mind, Spirit. And that was with 25 other authors. And it was so inspiring to hear everybody else's stories and then to curate and produce the book, Sacred Connection, and then to find Dina, who brought both of us now that we've collaborated in Miracles Are Normal. It's funny. There was a time in our lives, right, where if you were a published author, that meant that you had, submitted something and, 30 different offerings to different publishers, and you had to have an amazing, special, significant thing. Well, we live in a different world now, and there's
Mhm.
so many pathways to get your message out. Substack, social media, YouTube, anybody can be an influencer, a creator. We're all, because that's truly what we all are. We're all influencers. We're all teachers. We're all students. Again, it's part of Earth School. Being a part of these types of communities, again, we're back to the reflection picture. They are reflections of where you are along the journey. There are many pathways to get to self. Find the one that serves your heart and resonates with your field. And I guarantee you, when you start looking at yourself, you will literally attract, it will magnetize, you will call in those that are ready for to guide you, to lead you, to reflect to you where you're going next. And we're all disco balls. We're all walking around, reflecting mirrors with each other. I mean, this is the fun part about it, is it's funny to look at how we reflect to one another and to feel into, does that really serve me? Or am I allowing myself to be small to fit in?
Mm.
Or am
Good.
I extending myself to take up space, especially for women? Take up space, fill the energy of who you truly are, and you will feel the vibration flow through.
I love what you said there about are we making ourselves feel small just to fit in. That is so, so powerful. And this has been a great conversation, a great journey to be on with you. Great to connect with you. The energy is fantastic. You've got this glow with you that just radiates that I'm here to help and guide and serve. So I have one final question for you. As you know, the name of the show is Eagle Freedom Presents. And so I like to end with this and I ask my guests this question, because it means something different to everybody. So what does freedom mean to Ann Jonas?
Mm. Freedom means that I'm choosing to be here now. And I'll tell you this, I have a fun little phrase. When you're here now, you've won. N-O-W, flip that word, W-O-N. And then we're one with everything, O-N-E. And then we own it, O-W-N. So freedom to me is being here now.
Wow, that's powerful. And I want to thank you very much for spending time with me and my audience and sharing your story with us. And again, if you're out there, if something with this resonated with you, I got something for you to do. As you mentioned here, for anybody out there listening, don't do this if you're driving, but do it when you get home. But go home and actually look in the mirror, because I like what you said about looking in the mirror, looking in your eyes, because I think it's something we don't do enough is actually looking at ourselves. So if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, take some time, take a look in the mirror and look deep into your eyes and let us know what it is that you finally see that you haven't seen before. And again, thank you very much for joining us today, and bless you on your journey.
Thank you so much. This has been a beautiful conversation, and I'm honored to be on your show.
All right. And everybody out there, remember, as we wrap things up, that you too can rise, inspire, and overcome. God bless.
Beautiful.
To learn more about our mission and become a part of #Rio Movement, visit eaglefreedompresents.com. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs a beacon of hope. If you know someone who has an amazing story of overcoming, send us an email to eaglefreedompresents@gmail.com. And remember our mantra: rise, inspire, overcome. Podcast distribution for Eagle Freedom Presents provided by Podetize. Visit podetize.com for all your podcast needs.